Do you believe coaches have a critical lifespan as coaches on one team, that eventually the message gets lost on the players?
Yes. But I also believe that lifespan, that shelf life is dictated by how smart you are, how reasonable you are, how well you listen, how well you adapt. I think the harder you are on your players, the shorter the shelf life. So I think our coach is a thinking coach, a teaching coach. He'll try to talk you into the reasons to do this rather than threaten you. And so you have a much longer runway, a much longer shelf life as a thinking teaching coach than you do as an old school coach. And that's evolved, obviously. The millennial player is different than he was 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Of course, yeah.
Coaching's had to evolve too.
Yeah. Who's the longest serving coach right now in the NHL, guys?
I think it's John Cooper.
I was going to say John Cooper.
Coop and then Sully, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not very long when you think about it, though. It's like it's 8 years.
But that's a problem. That's a problem in our industry. The quick firing of coaches and GMs is absurd in our league and in pro sports in general. So I've made that rant on TV a number of times. I really believe it. I think change is too quick. And I think that you're dealing with 32 teams now. And that math has changed. I remember saying this to guys in the room as we would add expansion teams, and Tampa came in, and who else came in with Tampa that year? Ottawa came in that year. I remember everyone saying, yeah, we got two more jobs for GMs. I'm like, yeah. And you got 2 more teams that'll knock your team out in the playoffs. So the math, when I was a rookie GM, you remember when there were 5 teams that missed the playoffs? 21 teams and 16 teams made it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it was pretty simple to get back in, make a couple small deals. Now you can miss the playoffs and miss for several years, many years, and still not get back in there. So the math has changed, and I don't think the ownership, not our ownership, because they've been great, but I don't think the ownership groups around the league have taken note of the math. So after the first round, there's 8 teams left. So you play for 7 days, you work all year, and 16 teams get in. 7 days later, roughly 8, maybe 9 days later, you're down to 8 teams. And that math is daunting for owners that don't understand it.
But I think there were 12 coaches changes either during the season or just after the season ended this year, Brian. And the ones that were changed during the season, and you take a look at one of your old teams and what Bruce Boudreau did in Vancouver, that his success as a coach will justify coaches being fired and having short shelf life. I mean, look what Darryl did in Calgary in a short period of time, really. So there's your owner, tapping you on the shoulders, the manager just saying, look what they're doing over there. Aren't they?
Yeah, I know. Gabby messed up a lot of teams.
Well, but I've long been of the belief, Burkey, that in many occasions, not all by any stretch of the imagination, but in many occasions, coaches are fired by general managers who believe their job is in some jeopardy if they don't do that. And I believe it happens in every single sport. Agree or not?
Yes. No question. But that's overall, I think they're linked issues, that patience is not a virtue in pro hockey, and it's unfortunate. So I think you're right. I think the decision-making process is, I always looked at my team and said, are we good enough to win? If we're good enough to win, I expect us to win, to be in the playoffs. We're not good enough to win. That's my fault. I'm not going to make a coaching change. That thinking has changed now.
So when we hear, the coaches lost the players, how much influence do the players have in all of this?
Oh, they have a lot. They always have. The notion is that that's a recent development, that players have strength in the room as players that they didn't have before. They've always had that strength. And yes, you can lose the room. You can get off course with your team and lose the room completely, and it's almost impossible to get it back. So that's a real thing. When people talk about a player losing the room, that's a real thing. That's a series of body blows to the coaching, from the coach to the players, where the players say, well, that's not right. And you got to think at least a little bit like what works for the group.
Yeah. But have you ever walked into a room as a manager or as the president of hockey operations and said, boys, I'm not firing that guy. I'm going to fire some of you.
Yeah.
And the
I've
reaction is
walked-
what?
I've walked in and told teams that. I've walked in and told teams I'm not trading anybody. Like I remember the year, I think it was 9/11, we had a terrible start. I think we were 3-8-4. And I called a team meeting and I said, I put a list of attributes up on the wall: winning battles, losing battles, winning faceoffs, losing faceoffs, getting pucks deep, whatever. And I went through and I said to the guys, last year we had a great start. We did all these things. Here's what we're doing now. We have a terrible start. So I said, the logical assumption is I'm going to fire a couple guys at here or fire the coach. I'm not firing the coach, and I'm not trading anyone. I believe in this group. I said, I will give you my word that I will leave this team intact. I had a couple ice time issues, a couple players that wanted out. I said, other than these two guys who knew who they were, and I named them, other than these two guys who I will feel free to trade at any time, I'm going to keep this group together, which makes me either the smartest guy in Western Canada or the dumbest.
Speaking of Western Canada.
And hang on. And we went on a tear. We played like 7:30 winning hockey after that and made them at 100 points.